Sky News goes behind the scenes with West Midlands Police as officers are trained to deal with dangerous dogs. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight.
Good evening from Jerusalem. We start with a defiant message from Israel's Prime Minister that his ground invasion of Gaza will go ahead after reports the operation could be delayed at the United States' request. In Gaza, the situation remains perilous. The UN's relief agency there saying it might have to stop operations in the morning unless fuel is urgently allowed into the enclave. Our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey reports, and just a warning here, his report does contain pictures of body bags.
There isn't really anywhere to hide above ground in Gaza anymore. Israel knows that Hamas fighters are underground. But the military strategy is starting at the top and in time will go below the surface. The real issue is that the civilians told to move from the north are above ground, trying to survive the aerial bombardment, and it's hard. A land invasion will have to follow if Israel really is going to achieve its goal of wiping Hamas out. International pressure to delay the military moving in for a variety of reasons, but mainly to ensure the release of hostages, is working. But the Israeli Prime Minister addressed the nation with a familiar pledge.
What stands before our eyes is only one thing: saving the country, achieving victory. We're raining hellfire on Hamas. We have already eliminated thousands of terrorists. This is only the beginning. At the same time, we're preparing for a ground operation. I will not specify when, how, or how much.
Civilians in Gaza are desperately in need of everything to survive, from shelter to food to water. But there is a key shortage, and that is linked to everything. It's fuel, and it's almost out. Moving through the bombed-out streets, they collect bodies on donkey-drawn carts. They don't have the fuel to use ambulances. There's not much dignity in death at the best of times in war. This is more sad than significant, but for the families, it hurts. As they bury the latest victims, a man in charge tells them to place a child's body in her dead father's arms. The men leave to get her mother, his wife's body, to join them. In death, they will be together for eternity.
There are dead bodies everywhere. We had to use the cart because there are no transports. The ambulances can't move because there's no fuel. This is too much for us when we cannot cope with the situation.
Sometimes bodies are just loaded onto trucks that do have fuel. The retrieval of bodies is now a continuous operation. The numbers of dead keep growing, and this war seems far from even slowing down. The Israeli military took to social media to claim there is loads of fuel in Gaza, just that Hamas won't release it. Well, they do need it for certain. But regardless of this, the aid agencies that also need fuel aren't in a position to take it off Hamas, so they want it brought in.
The supplies of fuel that UNRWA has and manages are running out, and they're running out fast. Humanity is really failing the people, the civilians, the families of the Gaza Strip. All we're asking for at UNRWA is to be able to allow to fulfill our humanitarian duties. That's not too much to ask. That's not too much to ask.
What happens in Gaza in the coming days is unclear, although an Israeli land invasion seems inevitable. Life there is already intolerable and can only get worse. As it stands, a lot worse. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Israel.
Well, the funeral has taken place today for a British-Israeli woman and her two daughters murdered in the Hamas attack. Lian Sharabi was killed at the Be'eri kibbutz. Her daughters Noya and Yahel went missing, both later to be found dead. The girl's father and his brother are still missing. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has sent this report from the town of Kafar Harif in southern Israel.
In the cemetery of a small moshav, under the shade of the trees, a British mother and her 2 daughters were buried beneath the soil of Israel, in the land they made their home. Lian, Noya and Yahal Sharabi were killed in Be'eri that Saturday morning when the peace of Shabbat and the gentle sanctuary of the kibbutzim was shattered by the hatred of Hamas.
What you saw now is what happened when we fail, when Israel failed, even just for a minute, to protect their citizens, and this is what happened.
Lian's husband and the girl's father, Eli, is thought to be in Gaza, one of the 220 hostages whose fate is unknown and whose absence sits heavy on this country's future. 19 days after the terror attacks, a lot of the world's attention has shifted to the military operation against Hamas and the international diplomacy to try and stop this conflict spreading. But there are still so many families burying their dead, and many who still have no idea what actually happened to some of their loved ones.
And we enjoyed hearing of her life.
In a recorded message sent from England, a mother and grandmother remembered the lives of her girls.
We will miss our girl to the end of our days and keep her in our hearts forever, tucked away with the fondest memory of her 48 years. Good night. Sleep tight, sweetheart.
School friends sat by the graves, not wanting to leave, but forced to say a final goodbye in a moment that has forever stolen any naivety of youth. Palestinian or Israeli, this is now a place of constant funerals, the daily burial of innocents who wanted no part in this fight, and with the depressing certainty of more to come. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in southern Israel.
In New York, 2 resolutions at the UN Security Council have failed to pass this evening. One, tabled by America, called for a humanitarian pause. The other, tabled by Russia, called for a full ceasefire.
The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Security Council.
Let's bring in our US correspondent Mark Stone, who is in Washington. Mark, stalemate at the Security Council. How often have we said that?
Yeah, I really felt, Mark, that the paralysis that we have seen so many times at the Security Council, it really crystallized tonight with 2 extraordinary votes. The first had been tabled by the United States, a weekend of diplomacy, language that they believed would amount to a resolution that would pass. It called not for a ceasefire, but for a humanitarian pause to allow aid to get into Gaza. That vote did not pass because it was vetoed by Russia and China, both of whom have been calling for a full ceasefire, America says cynically. Now, they've tabled a second resolution which called for that full immediate ceasefire. That was vetoed by the United States and by the United Kingdom, who do not want to see a full ceasefire because they believe that undermines Israel's right to defend itself. Either way, the consequence is that the people of Gaza will remain without aid and without any of the bombing on them stopping.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. That is it from Jerusalem. Let's go back to Gillian now at Sky Centre.
Mark, thank you. 2 Metropolitan Police officers have been sacked over the stop and search of 2 athletes. Bianca Williams and Ricardo dos Santos claimed they were racially profiled when they were pulled over on their way home from training in July 2020. Today, a disciplinary panel ruled that wasn't the case, instead finding the officers guilty of gross misconduct over honesty and integrity. But Mr dos Santos has told Sky News he disagrees with those findings. Sadia Chowdhury reports.
Wait, he didn't do anything!
Not racist. That's the conclusion of a panel investigating the 5 police officers involved here. They're detaining a couple to stop and search them for drugs and weapons. The pair are Team GB athlete Bianca Williams and her boyfriend Ricardo dos Santos. It's Bianca filming this.
Get out of the car and we don't need to do this.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car now!
They claimed this stop and search was racially motivated. Investigators disagreed. Evidence from an expert witness said the officers wouldn't have been able to see that the vehicle's occupants were black when they decided to pursue it.
I believe these are false allegations and were based on racist stereotypes.
Instead, 2 of the officers were dismissed for gross misconduct over honesty and integrity. The panel said they had become trapped in a lie about smelling cannabis on the couple.
I still believe it was racially motivated, and I know that the officer saw me because I saw him, and for them to turn around and say that he didn't see me and there's nothing from the stop was racially motivated, it just goes to show that the system is there, but it's not really there to help us.
How do you feel about the Met now?
I have little trust in moving forward. I have little trust in how they will actually deal with the situation.
So it's been 30 years since Stephen Lawrence died. Are you saying that nothing has changed since then?
I am saying nothing has changed. Racism is still there, but the accountability isn't there.
Tonight, a promise from the Met.
We need to reset our approach to stop and search. That involves more training for our officers. It involves working much more closely with the community. It's about being much more precise in where we target our activity. But ultimately, it's the officers, and we're all accountable for our actions and for our comments and our conduct. And on this occasion, those officers let themselves down and they've let the organisation down.
The couple now want to focus on their athletic careers, but not just that. They're setting up a charity to help fund legal cases for others who feel they've been wronged by the police. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News, at the Met misconduct hearing in London.
People living in the Mexican beach resort of Acapulco have been caught off guard by an historic hurricane battering the coast. Otis intensified from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in the space of just a few hours, leaving 1 million residents with no time to evacuate. Well, the hurricane made landfall near Acapulco earlier today, approaching from the south, and hit the southern Pacific coast with torrential rain and winds. The weather system is one of the fastest intensifying hurricanes in history. It's set to continue travelling northwest, bringing up to 20 inches of rain to Mexico's east coast on Thursday. It was downgraded to a Category 2 once it crossed the coast, but still brought sustained winds of nearly 110 miles an hour as it battered the region. Sky's US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
With so little time to prepare, the people of Acapulco took shelter where they could, here in the corridors of a hospital. The city's hotels too were battered, as winds of 165 miles per hour whipped through here. Those cowering inside said it felt like being at the epicentre of an earthquake. The strength and severity of Hurricane Otis didn't just take the people and the authorities in Mexico by surprise. It subverted every hurricane forecasting system in the world, intensifying from a relatively weak storm to a Category 5 hurricane in less than 24 hours.
It's a phenomenon because in a very short period of time, 12 hours, it became really strong and made landfall as a Category 5 storm.
The hurricane made landfall in the dead of night. Communication lines to the affected area are still wiped out, making it difficult to gauge the cost to life and livelihood. But it is expected to be devastating. It's the latest in a worrying trend of storms which strengthen beyond all expectation. Scientists say they're fuelled by rising sea temperatures and climate change, making natural disasters like this more likely.
It is unusual, I think, to see this many in that part of the world. And as I said, the forecasts have not been particularly good in capturing the intensity of this storm over the last 24 hours or so. So it hasn't been well predicted, and therefore the storm warnings for locals has been pretty poor.
Hurricane Otis weakened as it passed over land, moving away from the coast. But warnings persisted of the potential for deadly mudslides in the mountains caused by heavy rains. For the 1 million people who live in this city, the danger, so quick to develop, will take longer to dissipate. Martha Kellner, Sky News.
The family of a schoolboy who was stabbed to death by his friend say they finally have justice after a coroner ruled he was unlawfully killed. 17-year-old Yusuf Maki died at Hale Barnes in Greater Manchester after he was stabbed in the chest. Joshua Molnar was found not guilty of murder and manslaughter after a trial in 2019, telling the court he'd acted in self-defence. Inzamam Rashid reports.
A smile, relief, but most importantly, justice. Three things Yusuf Maki's family have wanted for over 4 years. Today, they got it. After a criminal trial, a first inquest, and now the conclusion of a second, a coroner ruled that this 17-year-old boy was in fact unlawfully killed after being stabbed in the heart by his friend.
Sometimes it feels like it happened yesterday and other times like it was 10, 20 years ago. But every day without him has been painful. But today I feel a sense of peace and closure that, you know, we've got answers and we've proven that he was unlawfully killed.
How's that happened? I don't know. Just give me a sec, please, mate. How's that happened? I don't know.
On the 2nd of March 2019, after stabbing Yusuf, Joshua Molnar lied to police, claiming he had no idea what had happened. At his trial, he said he'd acted in self-defence and was acquitted of murder and manslaughter. But the coroner concluded Yusuf Maki was never violent at any stage that night, nor did he use a knife to threaten or attack Joshua Molnar. Instead, his actions amounted to manslaughter.
Whenever you have a process like an inquest which has to be redone, then that indicates that something went wrong, quite badly wrong. The family have been vindicated in their very long journey to get justice. They haven't been well served by the justice system until today.
Greater Manchester Police will now review this ruling and likely re-examine evidence to see if something has been missed.
Despite being killed here, Yusuf Maki wasn't actually from the leafy suburbs of Cheshire. He was from a humble working-class background in South Manchester. But his family believe his involvement with two rich friends played a major role in over 4 years of injustice.
I do feel like if the defendants were from a normal working class background, that the result would have been different. And we've fought hard, we've had to campaign and fundraise. We've fundraised over £68,000 for legal costs, which the other sides haven't had to do. So I do feel like it has been unfair.
But this is closure for Yusuf's family, time to move on. A bright, smart and kind young man, maligned throughout the process, finally delivered justice. Inzamam Rashid, Sky News, Greater Manchester.
A police officer who blackmailed underage girls to send him explicit photos has been jailed for life. Lewis Edwards, who's 24, posed as a teenage boy and groomed more than 200 girls online. He was caught by his own force, South Wales Police, with officers discovering nearly 5,000 indecent images on his devices. Donald Trump has been fined $10,000 during his civil fraud trial in New York. Judge Arthur Engoron said the former US president had violated a gagging order which bans him from criticising court staff. In Washington, the Republican Mike Johnson says he's ready to govern after being elected House Speaker, ending weeks of political chaos on Capitol Hill. Republicans unanimously elected the Louisiana congressman, who was the fourth nominee after weeks of party infighting. The Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, appeared in front of the 1922 committee this evening. That's the backbench committee of Conservative MPs. It comes amid the ongoing row over the BBC's decision not to describe Hamas as terrorists. Reports say Mr Davie was questioned repeatedly over the corporation's coverage of the crisis. The Director General spoke to Sky News afterwards.
It was a regular meeting and obviously it was a private conversation, so thanks very much.
What conversations did you have regarding language to do with Hamas?
As I say, it was a private conversation at the 1922 committee.
Are you taking direction from government about this?
Absolutely not. We set our own independent editorial direction, and that's what we do. Anyway, thank you very much.
What's the reasoning for the BBC not calling Hamas terrorists? Mr Davie?
Muslim Labour MPs have again urged Sir Keir Starmer to call for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas as divisions continue over the party's position on the conflict in the Middle East. The Labour leader has joined the Prime Minister in demanding a humanitarian pause between the two sides. But several Labour councillors have resigned after he appeared to suggest in an interview that Israel's decision to withhold water and power from Gaza was proportionate. Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue reports.
He's a Labour leader boosted by a double by-election win, but unity can unravel quickly.
This is what the community wants. Community wants a ceasefire.
Keir Starmer's under attack from some on his own side.
I am hurt in a sense that the leader should act on this a lot sooner. This has been going on for 3 weeks now, and it's the time that he needs to call for a ceasefire.
Do you think Labour could lose votes over this?
I believe Labour will lose votes and they will lose the support. I have a lot of pressure on me from the local community.
He is one of 150 Muslim councillors calling on Labour to back a ceasefire. Some have resigned too, anger spurred by a radio interview. Keir suggesting Israel had a right to cut off supplies to Gaza. He later clarified and today said it's clear that the amount of aid and essential utilities getting into Gaza is completely insufficient to meet the humanitarian emergency on the ground.
Labour's position has continuously been Israel has a right to defend itself within international law. I think people have been upset and hurt and wanted us to be louder and clearer on the humanitarian crisis. But as an MP who represents a very diverse constituency with both Muslim and Jewish constituents, let me tell you, I understand what these communities are going through.
But in the parliamentary party, rumblings of discontent. Behind closed doors in Parliament, Keir Starmer has just been meeting with Muslim MPs. We tried to speak to some of them coming out of the meeting. No one wanted to talk openly. And we have seen very little public criticism from the parliamentary party. But privately, some have been unhappy with Keir Starmer's tone over the last week. The meeting was described as constructive, but another Labour source said there'd been a deeply insensitive pattern of behaviour in the leadership. And there is genuine worry in the party about losing Muslim votes.
The ceasefire is something important for both sides. They should call on Israel firstly to just bring a ceasefire and stop bombing and just let the humanitarian aid in.
In places like Cardiff, where Keir Starmer was accused of misrepresenting the nature of a visit to a mosque, the public image is not the full picture for a leader trying to keep a grip on his party. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
A blow for Rishi Sunak today as he marked his first year in office. He could be facing yet another by-election after the MP, Peter Bone, was suspended for 6 weeks over allegations of bullying and sexual misconduct. A recall petition will now take place in his Wellingborough constituency, which could lead to another vote. Sky's political correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
Defiant, but fading away from public life. Peter Bone, the MP for Wellingborough, has been suspended for 6 weeks after being accused of bullying and sexual misconduct by a junior member of staff. He's denied the charge, but he's had the whip removed and his political career is probably over.
The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
MPs accepted the suspension without challenge after Parliament's independent expert panel recommended the move. The report said the bullying involved violence, shouting and swearing, mocking, belittling and humiliating behaviour and ostracism. This willful pattern of bullying also included an unwanted incident of sexual misconduct. This was a deliberate and conscious abuse of power using a sexual mechanism, indecent exposure.
This poses another headache for the Conservatives because it paves the way for a by-election in Wellingborough, a safe seat with a majority of over 18,000. But it comes less than a week after the party suffered crushing defeats in Tamworth and Mid-Bedfordshire. If that's taught us anything, is that the concept of a Tory safe seat is quickly becoming a fiction.
Peter Bone wants to look active in his constituency. He was out and about on Tuesday, canvassing with a local council candidate. He says he wants to continue serving his constituents in Wellingborough, but they're not so sure about him.
I think it's disgusting, honestly do.
We need somebody different. We need a Labour candidate in.
You're not guilty unless you're found guilty by a court of law.
And if we were to sign a petition for something like that, it makes us no better than the mob, does it?
Rishi Sunak promised to restore integrity to public office, but he's struggling to root out the problem. And with each by-election that follows, it's him and his party that face the consequences. Gurpreet Nawan, Sky News.
After a series of fatal attacks, police are giving advice to the public on what to do if people are confronted by a dangerous dog. The government is looking at ways of banning the so-called XL bully breed because of their involvement in a number of the most serious incidents. But police and trainers say any dog can be aggressive. Sky's Lisa Dowd spent the day at a West Midlands Police training centre to learn how to deal with an aggressive dog. And a warning, her report includes footage of attacks by dogs.
It is difficult to know what to do for the best when faced with this. Hans is a highly trained police dog, but even with a suit weighing 6 stone for protection, you can feel his attack.
The force is incredible. You can't feel his teeth clamped around you, but it's a real bruising feeling. It's really frightening, actually. But your heart's racing, and you can imagine that your first thing is wanting to run. But according to the police, that's one of the worst things you can do.
Try and be as still as possible. If the dog is then biting you, try and keep them as still as you can. Try not to fight with the dog. And then if somebody comes and tries to take hold of their collar, to try and prevent as much injury as we can.
West Midlands Police say they're facing a steep rise in dog attacks, including ones by types of XL bullies, the breed the government says they're close to banning because they've been involved in half of the fatal dog attacks in the UK in recent years. But action against one breed wouldn't have stopped this. Mohammed Sami Raza was simply playing outside his house in Walsall when he was mauled by a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. He's lucky to have survived.
I see the dog, then I thought it would go away, but then it started biting me, then I shouting help, help. It was basically biting me, not letting go.
West Midlands Police say that in the last 6 months, their force alone has been called out to 800 dangerous dog incidents.
That's all right, Charlie. Good lad. Good lad, Charlie.
Probably over the last 12 to 18 months, we have seen a massive increase. To the point that some days you can come to work and literally that's all you can deal with for the household duty, these dangerous dog incidents.
Experts say any dog is capable of an attack, and while many XL bully owners are furious that they're being singled out, the government believes the rising number of attacks demands action. Lisa Dowd, Sky News, the West Midlands.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Daily Mirror's Associate Editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Amanda Flattel. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this story on the front of The Guardian, their headline, fears of worsening humanitarian disaster in Gaza as fuel runs short. We'll be right back. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. In a speech to the nation, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that a ground offensive is coming. Gaza is said to be fast running out of fuel. The UN says it could be forced to bring its operation there to an end. And 2 police officers have been sacked for gross misconduct after the stop and search of athletes Bianca and Ricardo dos Santos. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Amanda Platel. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza leads The Guardian with fears that fuel supplies there are starting to run out. While here at home, the Mail reports that Labour is tearing itself apart over Sir Keir Starmer's decision on who to back in the conflict. The Metro leads with the 13 life sentences given to a paedophile police officer who sexually blackmailed 210 girls by posing as a 14-year-old on the internet. The Mirror reports that one of the killers of James Bulger is to have a secret parole hearing next month because of fears that holding it in public would damage his mental health. The Financial Times reports that turmoil in the US bond markets is forcing American companies to delay their plans for borrowing funds to invest. The Sun has news of an air rage drama on a flight carrying singer Ed Sheeran. And the Daily Star reignites the old debate about astrology, whether it's a real science and whether the stars and planets really do influence people's lives. Let us know what you think. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Amanda Platel. Welcome again to both of you. Let's start with the Israel-Hamas war, as is still on all of the front pages and still raging on. The Guardian speaking about fears growing for the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza. Kevin?
Yeah, in the real world, away from star signs, it's really grim in Israel and Gaza at the moment. And the Guardian's quoting Oxfam saying Israel's using starvation as a weapon. Only 2% of the usual food supply is actually getting through. The United Nations warning that fuel is about to run out, which means hospitals, bakeries and water pumps won't work. 600,000 people displaced. Latest death toll from the Hamas-controlled Health Authority is 6,500. UNICEF say 2,360 children are amongst the dead there. And The Guardian also says the ground invasion in part has been postponed, according to the Wall Street Journal, because the US wants to get in place a defensive missile system to protect its own troops and bases and weapons should the conflict spread. It's absolutely incredibly grim. That's what it is. It's just utterly grim and it's totally dispiriting.
And Amanda, the very worrying thing is that relief efforts into Gaza, according to the humanitarian agencies, they're saying that they could be forced to stop completely.
I know. Look, it is just appalling. As you've just mentioned, Kevin, you know, that children are living on rations if they can get them. They haven't got clean water. They're being used as human shields for Hamas, and they're the ones who are really, really suffering. But I was watching something on Sky earlier today, one of your experts who's had some satellite pictures, and they were taken over Gaza, and it was supposed to be depicting 12 huge tanks full of fuel. And it was estimated that it's got 500,000 litres of fuel in there. But that's for Hamas. That's not for the Gazan people. And there are a number of people now, and your expert said, you know, the perceived wisdom is that this was a satellite picture. It identifies with all signs that this is a huge amount of fuel that is right there, but Hamas will not let the people use it.
Yeah, to collectively punish a population like this is a war crime, unquestionably. The Guardian has another war crime on its front page with These are mourners at the funeral of a British Israeli woman who was murdered with her two daughters by Hamas in an appalling, barbarous act on October the 17th. 1,400 people slaughtered. Biggest mass killing of Jewish people since the Holocaust. But you've got now on both sides of the border, you've got unspeakable acts. And innocent people are dying.
So that story you pointed out to me about the children, the Palestinian children writing on their hands.
Yeah, well, that's in the metro. In Gaza, children are writing their names on their arms because they fear they're going to be killed and won't be able to be identified.
Or putting like identity bracelets.
Yeah.
But then, Kevin, you go to that is just so awful. But then you go to the bodies that they're still trying to identify. The forensic scientists still trying to identify in Israel. And this quote today, which has got to be, it's one of those ones which it just stops you breathing. He says, babies are the hardest to identify because they've got no teeth. And it just again and again, children writing their names on their arms, babies not being able to be identified. It's
children are children, women are women, men are men, innocents are innocents, whether you're Israeli or whether you're Palestinian. And you can't justify in any way other than to massively condemn what Hamas did to the Israelis. But you see now dropping that number of missiles and bombs in an area like that and creating a siege, stopping adequate supplies of food, water, medical equipment and fuel going is anything other than barbaric.
Well, the loss of innocent human life is desperately sad on
and those children, even the ones who survive, you imagine what their lives will be like, what their traumas will be like, never having to know what it's to sleep safe in your bed on either side of the war. You know, growing up, losing your parents, losing your siblings, your family, thinking that this kind of menace and is part of your life. I mean, it's a lifelong sentence.
Just going back to the humanitarian crisis and the fact that fuel can't get in, the Israelis are pointing to the fact that Hamas does have fuel and they are committing this crime against their own people by not releasing.
There is a truth in that, an absolute truth in that, but there is also a truth now that the Israelis are committing international crimes by killing so many civilians. You just can't escape. I know the Israelis and supporters don't like to hear that, but that is what is happening. And
but you also have the other side of the fuel of the Israelis not allowing the fuel to come in with the aid because they believe it will go straight to Hamas. So it is so complicated. And Hamas could actually get those hospitals working right now if they freed up the fuel that they've got.
No, if you're a Palestinian civilian and you're innocent, you're caught between Hamas and the Israelis. The Israeli Defence Forces, the Israeli military and the politicians who authorise it.
Yes, and the innocent. So we know that already, I think, about 6 hospitals have completely shut down already. And the call now is that aid has to get in now. There can't be any further delay. Let's have a look at this story as pertains to Sir Keir Starmer, and he's in a bit of a damage control situation within his own party over his comments in an interview.
He is, and he's now subsequently called for a humanitarian pause, a ceasefire effectively, to get that aid in, because in an interview on LBC Radio, he appeared to... Or he actually said, but he now claimed. He said no, he said it. No, but
it's viral.
Well, I've heard it. You don't need the transcript. He said it was Israel had the right to stop food and water going in. They do not. Now he subsequently claimed several days later, after he was under fire for it, that he was answering another question. But nevertheless, he's being pushed by MPs, not all of them Muslim, but some of them Muslim, other MPs who just think, some of them are traditional supporters of Israel, but just feel this is going too far in what's happening to the Palestinians in Gaza. Well, you've got to have that humanitarian pause to get aid in, otherwise people are going to starve
with the politics
and die of thirst as well as being blown to bits.
With the politics of it, for your party...
It's not my party, I'm not a member.
Oh, come on. Are you not a Labour supporter?
I'm not a member. I'm not a member.
I'm not a member either.
Yeah.
The politics of it for the Labour Party are that Keir Starmer spent 3 years trying to detoxify it from its anti-Semitism. It's always a stink that hung in the background, with even Corbyn standing up in Parliament last week, supporting the Palestinians. And he has worked so hard to do this. I think for a moment he was just blinded by that thing. What am I going to say? I am, and he's caught with one of the cleverest interviewers in the world.
Some of his colleagues think that being wary of long Corbyn on the issue of Palestine and the stain of anti-Semitism, plus the horror at what happened on October the 7th, destabilised his response, and he got it wrong. It's back Israel as an ally, but you cannot give anyone a blank cheque just to bomb.
Do you think that he should row back from that now and simply apologise?
Well, it might have been easier and said, did he really mean it at the time, or was he trying to avoid answering other questions? So do you apologise, or do you explain and move on?
But then he doubles up on that gutlessness in PMQs today, in Prime Minister's questions, where he did not ask a single one of his 6 questions about the conflict. And, you know, I'm sorry, and talking about, you know, Sarah from Solihull and somebody else when you've got, you know...
Yeah, but no. Those questions on the cost of living and the impact on people in Britain were perfectly legitimate. However, you get 6 questions, so you could split them.
Ask a single one.
You could do 2 and 4, 3 and 3. You can ask about Palestine, Hamas, Gaza, Israel in one set of questions, sit down and get up later and then come back on a complete separate subject, or you can just run the 2 in. I noticed, I tweeted about it, that he had all 6 questions on the cost of living, which is perfectly legit to ask about the cost of living. You know, it's a big Daily Mail readers.
I do not
think he was steering the trouble as he saw it.
I watched it, and I was just thinking, there's got to be a question. You cannot live the biggest humanitarian crisis in our lifetimes that affects so many of the West, not just the East, not just the East. And he bottled it.
I think he dodged it today,
He bottled it.
Question.
Amanda and Kevin, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, the former chief exec of NatWest breached Nigel Farage's data protection rights when discussing his banking affairs. We'll talk about that when we come back. Do stay with us.
have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister more decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Kevin Maguire and Amanda Platel. Let's delve into this story on the front page of the FT. And this is the news that the Information Commissioner Office has found that the former NatWest Chief Executive, Alison Rose, twice breached the data protection laws when she spoke to a journalist about Nigel Farage's account. Who wants to start on this?
It's just incredible, isn't it? In its dame. I don't know why the Financial Times won't put a proper title in. What's she up for? She's in line for, what is it? It's £2.4 million payoff. She has broken all the rules. She should be... If we did that in our jobs, Julie, if you did that in your job, we'd be shown the door and it wouldn't be revolving. We wouldn't get a penny payout because we'd have breached all of our codes of conduct. And she has done that, and it was a purely politically motivated let's get Nigel Farage campaign.
Although the...
allegedly.
Yeah, there was an inquiry...
Sorry, allegedly.
There was an inquiry which found that wasn't the case, although once you read the statement about how they just basically say he was scuzzy, you'd have found that very surprising.
And they were joking with each other about how they... Yeah.
Getting over how man of the people, anti-establishment Nigel Farage was so desperate to keep a Coutts bank account. Just get over that. I mean, everyone should be able to have a bank account. Look, you might not agree with him, you might agree with him, but he's legal and everything. He should be able to have a bank account where he wants. I'm not sure about that. But nevertheless, if he wants a bank account...
After that happened, I closed my entire NatWest bank account.
I thought you were going to say you closed your Coutts account.
There's no way Amanda would do that.
Like they'd have me.
Have you still got that? Have you still got a square checkbook?
I do have a checkbook, but it's an old-fashioned one.
A Coutts one?
No, I've never had a Coutts one. I've never had a Coutts one, and I had great pleasure in going and saying I'm closing my account on the basis of what you've done to Nigel Farage, and they said, "Do you want the £83 in cash or a cheque?" True story.
So we still don't know whether she will receive the 2.4 million.
Yeah, there's going to be no action taken against her because she quit, and NatWest, which I think is probably right. But does she get the money? Of course she'll get the money. She quit. Otherwise, there'll be a lengthy legal battle.
Well...
No, she made a mistake. She's paid a high price for it.
No, she hasn't paid a high price. A high price would be the 2.4 million that she was hoping to get the bonus.
She won't get it next year or the year after.
She's ended her career that she had since leaving university. That's not a high price.
Seriously? I mean, let's not stick up for her because she's a woman. I mean, she's been... No, I'm not saying you're doing that for a second. No, I apologise. I did not imply that. I just think they should play,
I hope you're not having a go at her because she's a woman.
OK, I just think she has broken the rules. And they're very important rules. The privacy of your banking is something... You know, I didn't even know how much my dad earned until I was about 35 years old. We're entitled to privacy about these things. And she blew it all over a national newspaper.
But she didn't say he had £21,438.92 in. She said, these are the rules, and he doesn't comply with the rules. No, she erred and she had to go. That I get. But I think, look, it wasn't a bank robbery. I mean, I just think the punishment should fit the crime. She broke it, she's lost a job, she'll get a payoff, but she won't get that money next year, the year after that, or the year on.
So you agree? You both agree that she was wrong? Yes.
That's the
last verse.
we are agreeing on.
Let's,
you can get agreement like that. You don't mind going to the Middle East, do you? Give it a go.
Let's end with Mystic Mugs, the front page of the Daily Star. Yeah, a bit of a gear change and a bit of light relief, I guess. What do you think of this story?
I don't think it's light relief at all. I think it's appalling. I mean, they're basically saying to the millions and millions of believers that it's all a load of mug. We're all mugs if we believe it.
Right, in star signs.
Sorry?
In star signs.
If we believe our star signs. And it has absolutely no influence on people's behaviour. And I just think this is shocking. I mean, I read my...
Do you believe star signs?
I think they're indicative.
You know that...
They're indicative of being able to sit down in the morning and think, you know, OK, I'm going to meet a tall, dark Capricorn. I thought, oh, no, that was my ex-husband. That's out of date. I'm reading the wrong year. No, Jack, what are you?
All right, hang on. If you believe this, you know that 87 quid you got from the NatWest, give it to me and I'll sell you the River Weir. There we are. All right. If you believe star signs.
Answer the question.
What star sign are you?
I'm a Virgo, which is always a bit embarrassing.
What are you, Amanda?
I'm a Scorpio.
Ooh.
Loyal. Loyal.
Sharp tempers.
And occasionally. And
a killer, basically.
And loyal.
Killer.
OK, we'll go out on the loyal, shall we? Kevin and Amanda, thank you very much for taking us through the papers. We'll see you at the top of the 11. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, there'll be widespread showers or longer spells of rain this week and strong winds in the north and south. It'll be mild and rather cloudy at first tomorrow with widespread showers and